Hey everyone, welcome back to the range. My name is Matt, also known as the King of Armor Destruction, the Armor Wizard, Zap. We have a body armor demo today, the soft kind. I normally don't do a whole bunch of soft armor, mainly because there's a limit of ballistic threats that I can shoot at them. Pretty much, they're mainly rated for 9mm and 44 Magnum, and some of our especially 5.7. And beyond that, once you get into our rifle threats, then that becomes an issue. But from OmniProtex today, we have their HG2 Plus panel, so that's under the new NIJ 07 standard. This is their Ultra line. Let's take a look at this guy and see what we're going to do today. Now, in full transparency, Amir from OmniProtex sent us over this package to do with as we please with no strings attached. I do have an affiliate set up with them, meaning that I have a discount code and a tracking link. And if you decide to buy something, I earn a sales commission from that. And what I do with that is I put it all right back in the channel by buying more specialty ammunition or different guns to do some of these testings. The particular SAPI panels that he sent me today are a 10x12. They are 358 thousandths thick or 9.347 millimeters. They weigh 1 pound or 1.21 pounds or 0.549 kilograms. They are made up of different types of our ultra high molecular weight polyethylene and aramid fibers, and they actually are fairly flexible. You run into that sometimes when you get some of the vests that are made out of all pure polyethylene or certain types of aramid, that they're not as flexible as other types. So this one is actually pretty flexible and even has an outside like Cordura cover on it. These same type of panels are in this particular vest that he sells as well, and you can see it actually conforms to my body pretty well. Normally you stick out a little bit right here, but up here remains pretty well flat to the body, so that if you were to put a more loose-fitting shirt on top of this or a jacket, it would be fairly well concealed. Now, if this is the first time you're viewing my channel, we do all of our body armor demos completely different than pretty much everyone else on YouTube. I'm always after worst case scenario. I'm not gonna shoot a level 3A plus with a 22 long rifle and work my way up. We're gonna go right to the threat standards and then some of our specialty threats to see what the worst case scenario that something like this can stop. Since this is pistol armor, we're gonna shoot at about 12 feet. We shoot at 0 degrees, again, because that represents worst case scenario. We have a giant clay briefcase filled with Roma Plastilina #1 clay from Chavant. That acts as our compressible media. Now, I'm out here in the woods. I'm not in an environmentally controlled chamber, so I can't keep that up to 100 degrees, and they certify it by dropping a ball on it. So we're looking at a representation of what back face can be. This particular panel sports a V50 of our 44 mag at almost 1900 feet per second. That's 500 feet per second over the NIJ spec. So if we see anything back face wise in our clay in excess of 44 millimeters, that could be failing in the NIJ's eyes. We use a chronograph whenever possible. We have a Pro Chronopal Digital DLX as well as a Garmin 0C1 as a second data point. A big thank you to Cabela's/Bass Pro Shops for sending that over for us to review, because it is certainly possible to under or overload ammunition. Again, we're after worst case scenario, so if I say we're using something at 1900 feet per second, we can actually get that feedback to know that we are close to that velocity. We also put a spreadsheet here at the beginning and the end. We kind of foreshadow all the threats we're going to shoot at them. We mark the velocities and the penetrations, and in the end we do a tear down to kind of look at what the guts of our plates look like. Since this is soft armor and not hard armor, we're not going to have to worry about whether or not this has edge-to-edge protection on it or not, because pretty much there is no ceramic strike face on here. And finally, I want to remind everyone that I am not an NIJ lab, so if you see a threat stopped or penetrated over here, you should always defer to the manufacturer to produce accredited and recent lab results for those threats. And on the flip side, if you're the manufacturer and you see me stop FN57 SS198 LF going 2600 feet per second, you should have that added to a special rifle threat to your panel. Amir does have some CPL listings for his current offerings, and I imagine once the NIJ 07 standard opens up for certification, this Ultra panel will be added as well. Panel #1 is strapped in and ready to go. Since we tested the Elite a little while ago, we kind of have a baseline of where I want to go with this to see how much better this is than that panel. You'll have to forgive me if you see my arms flail around any at all, because the mosquitoes for some reason are really bad, and yes, those suck. So we're going to start off with 9mm. We have 4 rounds to go from right here. We have our L7A1, that is our full metal jacket, 124 grain. That should get us to our velocity spec. Then we have our Liberty Civil Defense, that's the 50 grain hollow point, smoking fast. Typically in the past, a lot of other YouTubers have shown that that bullet will penetrate our aramid level 3As, but some of our polyethylene mixes will stop it. 1579 off the Garmin. 1586. 2585. Hoo-wee. 2665. Smoking fast, guys. Now we'll step up to the other NIJ level 3A or HG2 threat, and that is our 44 Magnum at 1430 feet per second. I don't have an 8-inch available. Actually, I lied, I do have an 8-inch available, but I don't have any loads developed for it. So what we've done is we've gone to 429 Desert Eagle. This is a 50 AE case necked down to 44 Magnum. I'm not sure if these loads will meet spec or if they'll be slightly faster, but since Amir rates this panel up to 1900 feet per second for 44 Magnum, this shouldn't be a problem if it is a little bit faster. 1474, so we are a little over spec there, but we have a solid hit on that panel. 1460, nice. All right, easy enough. Our 9mm full metal jacket number 1 and 2, our Liberty Civil Defense 1 and 2, our 44 mag first shot number 1 right there. Then our second shot, that's a little close to that. That may not be considered a fair hit because it should be about 2 inches. Our plate is bunched up a little bit. We may have to see if we can flatten it out for some additional shots, but place those bets in the comments below. Ho! No pass-throughs, folks. Very, very nice so far. That Liberty Civil Defense can be troublesome at 2600 feet per second. I mean, that is a rifle-like velocity. There's our back face from our 44 mag. The clay is a little bit cold. It's about 70 degrees outside today. That was 46 millimeters, and that one was 44. So right there at the limit after it had already taken some shots. Not too shabby if I do say so myself. Stopping the 9mm is obviously the biggest concern, mainly because that's probably the most common that you'll run into. All right, this is where it's going to get spicy for 9mm. In the past, our copper solids have performed very well, just like they do in 5.7, and this is no different. This is our Fort Scott Munitions 80 grain solid copper spun plus P. We'll take 2 shots out of the 4-inch Glock here, and if they don't go through, we have a 7.72 inch barrel as well as the 16, but in the past, this is a really hard round to stop. $15.53. Woo! Now for a fan favorite, our FN57. I brought a few specialty loads with me today, depending on what we're going to do. Right now, we've got our black Dragon Fang. This is a 34 grain pre-fragmented solid copper projectile. Should be going over 1900 feet per second in our 5.2 inch barrel rock. We'll take 2 shots on this panel and then go see what we did. .2025. Easy enough. Fort Scott Munitions shot number 1 and then number 2, and then our black Dragon Fang shots number 1 and number 2. I would definitely consider those fair hits. They are 2 inches away from subsequent hits. Now in the grand scheme of things, in actual NIJ protocol, they're usually only going to shoot a maximum of like 6 hits on a plate, and I will have to double check the 07 standard. They might have reduced that to 3, and it's like a triangle pattern, but they do multiple follow-up panels. Place those bets in the comments below. Uh-oh, Raggy. We will tear this apart at some point and confirm, but it looks like we only have a penetration from our first shot of our black Dragon Fang. We'll have to look at that velocity. The second one was stopped, but it looks like it's towards the back. Now, positive though, both of our Fort Scott Munitions rounds are stopped. So I think for the second panel, we'll have to pick up the velocity a little bit, go to the 7.72 inch on that. We'll see if there's any more spots left on this for any subsequent shots, but I don't want to degrade it too much because then at a certain point, then it's just going to be an unfair advantage to the panel. We'll pump up the barrel length to our CZ Scorpion Evo 3 SBR. This has a 7.72 inch barrel. We'll take 2 more shots of our Fort Scott Munitions. We should see some nice healthy velocity from this. Now, the only downside to the Garmin 0C1 that I've noticed so far is if you're doing armor testing like I do, or any kind of mixed velocity testing, there's 2 thresholds for velocity that you have to switch between. So if you go, you know, under 1700 feet per second for the one, like subsonic, you have to cancel the session and then start a new one. But that's the only so far downside is it's picking up the velocity at 12 feet. And if you didn't want to run a light screen chronograph, that's out of the way, and you just have this sitting on the bench. Very, very easy setup. $17.79. I think either I need a possum or some bats as pets to control the mosquitoes around me while I'm doing this, because the DEET and even all natural mosquito repellent are doing nothing. All right, easy enough. Fort Scott Munitions shots number 1 and number 2. I think at this point this panel is plenty used up. There might be a shot here and here, but I don't want to chance it. Place those bets in the comments below. No pass-throughs, folks. Impressive. Now, we are getting very, very close to defeating most of those layers of this panel with that round. So that means we'll have to go to the 16-inch and see if we can get through, but that's amazing. Typically with most other 3As, as I mentioned, that round is hard to stop even from the 4-inch. Panel number 2 is ready to go, and we've brought back our 5.7 by 28 millimeter threats. We've got our S4 from Elite Ammunition. This is the same bullet as SS192, SS195, 198. It is a 28 grain OTM with an aluminum core. It shines with lots and lots of speed. I think on the last panel from Amir, we were stopping SS198 out of the pistol, and then once we brought out the S4, it was failing, so it'll be good to see how this handles this. 27.88. Whew. To foreshadow a little bit, let's step up our S4 to our 16 inches. This is our Ruger LC. We have 2 more shots here. 30-13, wow. 30-20, smoking hot. Bringing back out the 44 cal, this should be somewhat of a max load in this cartridge, so we should see over 1600 feet per second. Did not get a velocity off the Garmin. 1541. Our 44 mag put a hurting on this plate. It's quite bunched up. Shots number 1 and 2 of the overpressure 44 mag are 16-inch S4 number 1 and 2. Then the 8-inch was right there. Place those bets in the comments below. Mosquitoes are getting bad, folks. Uh-oh, Raggy. Looks like we have a penetration from that S4M. But that one may have been stopped. We'll have to check. The 44 mag was obviously stopped. The dimples are pretty well in there. Well, 48 millimeters. And on this one, that one was 55 millimeters. As I mentioned, always defer to the manufacturer to produce accredited lab results to show, in this case, that the V50 rating is 1900 feet per second, that in a lab setting, it should be under 44 millimeters after that. We have one more threat after this, but since it stopped our Fort Scott Munitions out of our 8-inch barrel, we're gonna jump right to the 16. That might be a little too much for it, but there's only one way to find out. 1946. 1960, very nice velocities off that. All right, let's finish this plate off. Now this isn't rated for this in any way, shape, or form, but because it's the hotness from the last year or two, I like to throw it in there every now and then. This is our 8.6 black. This guy's claim to fame is ultra fast twist rate barrels. This is 1 in 3, yes, 1 in 3. The downside to that fast twist rate is you have to be careful on what kind of rounds you shoot on it because of the RPMs. You can spin bullets apart. I actually did that earlier today, testing these rounds that hit around, I think, 1100, so supersonic in the 12-inch, and it actually ripped the tip of the bullet off and the lead went with it, but then the jacket was in the barrel. So we've got the 8-inch, we've got some 274 grain full metal jackets. And the last time I think his plate stopped the 285 grain ELD match, so this shouldn't be a problem for it. I do have some brass and copper solids that will excel against pistol armor, mainly because of how long and sleek they are, and copper is a little bit harder than lead in terms of stopping them in armor, so then it likes to just penetrate through. So this, I feel, is a good threat, kind of like our 300 Black subsonics. .958. Nice. Let's go see what we did. Easy enough, folks. Our Fort Scott munition shot number 1 and 2, I placed that way too close to the S4. That is not considered a fair hit in the NIJ's eyes. Our 8.6 Black number 1, 2, and 3. Kind of bunched that plate up a little bit. It's kind of like 44 mag. There is a little bit of muzzle energy behind it because it's a heavy bullet, even though it's going slow. Place those bets, comments below. Carnage here, but it looks like we might have stopped all of those rounds. We'll tear this all down in a minute and confirm, and we'll annotate if any different, but that's impressive. This particular panel, whatever it's made of, I think it's got polyethylene and aramid. We're stopping some of our very advanced threats. Again, the 5.7 stuff is more of a rifle-like projectile. Even the civilian available stuff, if it has enough velocity, seems to favor being able to defeat soft armor. You know, that's what it was designed for. Let's tear these guys down.
Paging Dr. Matt to surgery. Paging Dr. Matt to surgery.
Now, for a fan favorite, the teardown. That's where we get to look at the guts of this plate. Now, typically with soft armor, there's not a whole lot to look at. They're just a bunch of layers of fabric, but we can kind of see the different types of layers that are being used here. So on our Ultra HG2 Plus here, this is like a Cordura covering. Got the back there, plastic cover so you can read the spec sheet that's done. Here is another nylon inner cover. Now I'll have to ding Amir just a little bit because we have a duct tape covering down here, but in theory that Cordura cover is the outermost covering, and there are other manufacturers who use different tapes to adhere our layers together. So I can't fault him for that. If I forgot to mention in the opening or any point during the video, this is made in America. Very, very nice, Amir. Here is panel number 1. Confirmed the only penetration was that black dragon fang. Now, our Liberty Civil Defense was very, very close to penetrating, but there's a few layers left there. Now, this is a cool part of like quality control and process documentation. We've got all these nice little barcodes on here that label the material for us. So this is UD Aramid UA615 Barday, whatever that is. That's typically what I call our aramid fiber. Then after that, we have some sewing at the top and the bottom. We've got our ultra high molecular weight polyethylene next, and that is Dyneema. That is SB117. There is our little branding mark there. Then we actually changed material types again. This is, what is this? Ultra Gatex. Interesting. This is actually labeled with his brand on there, so I don't know if that's an import material or not. Someone will have to comment below. We've got another layer of the Gatex. Very, very interesting. So a few different layers and a couple different material types pretty much make this effective against quite a few different handgun threats. Now, obviously, the higher muzzle energy things like 50A, 500 Smith & Wesson, those are going to fail on back face, but not necessarily on penetrations. On to plate number 2. Confirmed the only penetration was that S4 round from the 16-inch right there. Otherwise, the other rounds were stopped. You can see there is no penetrations into this rearmost layer of our SB117 Dyneema. Very, very impressive plate, if I do say so myself. I like that we have all these material types and that this plate is still fairly flexible, considering with a level 3A, you're going to want that to be very flexible so it fits your body as best as possible. And if you're going to any, low visibility or undercover operations, you don't want a thick, unflexible 3A pretty much sticking out from underneath your clothes, pointing out that you are wearing body armor. Very, very impressive, Amir. Great job. Well, I'll have to make this one quick because the mosquitoes are getting even worse out here. But Amir, you built a very excellent plate. Not often do I find something in level 3A or the new upcoming HG2 that is able to stop our Fort Scott munitions round, let alone some of our faster 5.7 loads. You know, the Black Dragon Fang as a solid copper is very pointy, and that's pretty much hard to stop. I also could have shot SS-190 at this, and that effectively is a level 3 rifle threat because it has that steel penetrator in it. I'm impressed that we're able to stop our 44 mag over the NIJ spec. Again, Amir lists the V50 on that at over 1900 feet per second. If he has the NIJ reports to back that up, that is darn right impressive. Now, the only downside to a system panel like this from Amir is the cost. Traditionally, a lot of our 3A, as they stop more and more threats and get thinner and lighter, the price goes way up. And at some point, you weigh the cost of something like this for $1,000 versus a plate carrier with some level 3 or 4 plates in there that would stop all these threats and a bunch of rifle threats. But those panels are going to weigh 5 to 6, 7 pounds a piece plus the plate carrier, so you're at 16 pounds. Definitely not, you know, high speed, low visibility if that's the route you want to go. With all that being said, it's time for me to get the heck out of here. I have a chicken burrito waiting for me at home, homemade. But at the end of all my videos, I take a moment to thank all those who help make these possible because there's a lot that goes into them. Number one is my family. They've been coming out more and more often to help me get things done and to take care of the property, so a big thank you to them. Number two are my Patreon, Subscribe Star, and YouTube channel members. I have a campsite in the description below. There are various different affiliate links or discount tracking codes that earn me a sales commission, and they cost you nothing. And I don't like to push you into a product. I like to present you guys with data, like for this particular panel, and if that data set helps you make a purchase decision and you want to say thank you for doing it, that's what those codes are for. And what I do with all that is I either buy more ammunition or a different caliber or barrel length to continue on doing testing. Number three is Amir over at OmniProtex. Again, in full transparency, send us those plates to destroy with no strings attached. And of course, number four is you all for watching. Until next time, I'll catch you at the range.